of sustainability in higher education. So this is the biggest achievement that UT Dallas has gold rating. We have 1.28 million square feet of LEED certified space across 8 certified buildings. We have 10 acres of pollinator habitats, 8,000 trees, 3 monarch butterfly way stations. We also have a community garden where student, faculty, and staff can garden. You can sign up to have a little area where you can plant your own fruits and vegetables and flowers. We also have the Eco Hub where students can go and also harvest sustainable produce and donate it to needing communities around campus. We have a vast composting program, so students can sign up to compost their organic waste, and we've composted over 600,000 pounds of food waste so far. We have EV, electric vehicle charging infrastructure on campus, and it's growing. We have received a number of certifications such as Bicycle Friendly University, B Campus USA, Tree Campus USA. We organize a lot of events on campus, but the star week is really Earth Week, where we have a lot of different events, and the core event is Earth Fair that typically takes place on the Thursday around Earth Day, so in April. And there's on the mall on campus, we have all the different organizations representing sustainability and their actions around campus. We also have an eco-rep program where students can sign up. If you're interested in sustainability, you can contact the Office of Sustainability to become an eco-rep. That means you become a student worker around a topic of sustainability. We also have an initiative currently in the works for banning single-use plastics on campus. So soon, hopefully, you won't see plastic straws, plastic lids, plastic containers on campus because these will be banned. And we also have an initiative, it's not here, but to move towards renewable energy for the energy that we use on campus. If you want more information about anything that has to do with sustainability, I put the website here. It takes you to the Office of Sustainability. The first thing to do is to sign up for the newsletter that you'll receive every month with a lot of good information. That's all I have.
Thank you, Dr. Han. So just a bit about the sustainability case competition. We know not all of you here are actually registered or signed up for the information session. So just a little bit of an overview. This competition, which is in our second year, is with the goal to create a business plan that aligns with the UN SDGs. And it's open to all UTD students this year, so you can have a team of 3 to 5 students. And through that, you'll be able to access exclusive workshops and then also get the chance to compete for cash prizes and also networking opportunities. A quick note about the teams: you don't actually have to have a team prior to registration. We're going to have some like social events and things of that nature to make sure that everyone gets matched to a team. So yeah. And here's a bit of an overview over the event calendar. So we're starting tomorrow with our information session, and registration will also open. On February 15th, we're going to have a little Valentine's Day themed social mixer. It's going to be a pizza lunch, and everyone is welcome to come. And then registration will close on February 24th. And after that, we're going to start with the competition activities such as workshops, some checkup deadlines just to make sure that everyone is on track, and then some deliverable deadlines. And once the final teams are notified, they'll make it to the final presentation on April 20th. Okay, so I'm just going to go ahead and introduce our speaker today. We have Mr. Omar Hernandez, who is the program manager for the UN Academic Impact Initiative and Sustainable Development Goals. And he's done a lot of work within sustainability over the past few years, especially in Venezuela and now over here. So Mr. Hernandez, if you want to go ahead and start with your talk.
Thank you very much to the university for the invitation, to the school, and it's a privilege, of course, to be able to speak to all of you a little bit about what we do, but also about the Sustainable Development Goals in general, and how important you are, students and future graduates and professionals in their respective fields to advance the 2030 Agenda for Sustainable Development. As I was introduced already, my name is Omar Hernandez. I am from Venezuela, and I had the privilege of being a university professor for over 15 years. And then I transitioned to the media and then to the United Nations. I first worked with the UN Office on Drugs and Crime, then with the UN Climate Change Secretariat, and since 2018, with the UN Academic Impact here at the United Nations headquarters in New York, where I'm currently at. And this is an initiative that aligns and engages with institutions of higher education at the worldwide, at the global level, with the intention of having these universities and colleges. And as of now, we have a network of over 1,600 of them in 152 countries. So the idea is that these institutions of higher education amplify the messages concerning the initiatives and activities that are carried out not only by our specific office, but also the Secretariat of the United Nations, and of course, the UN family, the UN system, which is composed by a large number of entities such as UNICEF, UNSCR, Welfare Program, FAO, and so on. So the idea is that we take into consideration the teaching, research, and community engagement initiatives of our member institutions to promote the sustainable development goals, but also to promote what they do to advance such sustainable development goals. And actually, the initiative that I manage is predates the SDGs. Actually, was created in 2010, and yet one of the fundamental principles that in which we base most of our work is precisely the promotion of sustainability through higher education. Higher education institutions have a pivotal role in not only the promotion of and the creation of awareness about and to inform their own students, staff, faculty, and researchers about sustainability, but also they have a social responsibility. And actually, it's particularly important because I know the angle that you're looking for is the business one. And actually, it's quite significant that many students are pursuing careers in sustainable fields. And many students are demanding that their business schools in which they are, the university in which they study, teach them not only the actual theoretical knowledge about their respective fields of expertise, but also to train them with skill sets that are quite demanded in the private sector for a number of reasons that I will lay out in a moment. So this idea that universities are passive actors, that were mere theoretical providers, that were just witnesses in this sustainable journey, this is a falsehood. This is an idea that is no longer true. This is an outdated idea. As of now, in the 21st century, in this year 2023, I'm sure we all know by now that we are not alone in this world. And if something the COVID-19 pandemic taught us, particularly not perhaps at the very onset of the pandemic, but some months into it, that the more collaboration we have between each other, the more engagement we have with different stakeholders, the more we are going to solve the challenges that we have in front of us. And again, the pandemic is a quite recent example of that, in which we saw that the production of vaccines, the production or the creation, I would say, of medical treatments to treat those who contracted the disease or the virus. Actually, all these treatments and all these vaccines are the product of a joint collaboration between researchers of different institutions around the world, and the collaboration between universities and the private sector. And also with the governments at various levels. So it is an opportunity in disguise, although this might sound like cliche, this global crisis, and which is complemented by other crises, not on the health sphere, but if we see, for example, the climate emergency, that, like we call it at the UN, this is not climate change phenomenon anymore. It's a climate emergency because it has deep and profound humanitarian and socioeconomic consequences. But also we see issues concerning peace and conflict and international security, like the Russian invasion of Ukraine that is almost a year later. And we saw, by the way, at that particular time when the invasion just started, the actions of universities many countries in Eastern Europe, particularly in Poland, in Hungary, Slovakia, Romania, we contacted directly from the UN Academic Impact side. These universities, actually, we had a briefing with them with UNSCR. We saw what they were doing to help those in need. So this is all to say that universities are not what people think about them. Usually, people that is outside of the university see them in a certain fashion, but in reality, and I come from the academic world myself, and I know for a fact that a university is a center of knowledge, but it's also a center of practice. Um, all the solutions, all the ideas, all the things that we need to be innovative to address and to ultimately resolve the global, national, and regional challenges and problems and difficulties that we face around the world. Um, they usually come from the academic world. They usually come not only from the university staff, their faculty, their researchers, but also their students. And we see the Sustainable Development Goals and the 2030 Agenda was an idea that was based primarily on, the Millennium Development Goals that they had certain success to a certain degree, and then based on the experience with that, the Sustainable Development Goals were adopted by member states, and of course these are minimum standards, and these are ideals with very tangible and concrete outcomes. Well, I would say expected outcomes, which we can see in the targets of each one of these goals. And I believe that the most important thing we have to acknowledge from the onset is that the Sustainable Development Goals that we see on the screen right now um, demystify the concept of sustainability. Sustainability, according to the very famous Brundtland report from the late 80s, 1987, actually, it says that we can satisfy the needs of our present without compromising, affecting, or impacting in any way those needs of the generations that are coming after us. This is a very simple idea. The UN doesn't have an actual concrete legal definition of what sustainability means or sustainable development for that matter, but we more often than not, we go with this sort of generic concept. And sustainability doesn't need to be strictly associated with environmental issues or themes related to biodiversity or the protection of the environment, although these are very important components of the discussion around sustainable development. But indeed, if you see right here, right now, the sustainable development goals that are on the slide, you see that they cover a wide range of issues, and not by coincidence, starting with poverty, because poverty is considered the root cause of most of the problems that the most vulnerable ones are suffering right now. Um, and I say right now because you have the privilege of being in an institution of higher education right now, but most of the people around the world do not have access to higher education or to any education whatsoever. Actually, that's one of the targets. When we see SDG 4, for example, on quality education, is precisely the issue of access to higher education, and that access is specifically to vulnerable groups like migrants, asylum seekers, people with disabilities, women, that normally are deprived. And we see the case of Afghanistan that was just um, uh, on the news, and actually the Deputy Secretary General just went there, and she highlighted the how deviated from the international standards the fact of this prohibition of higher education for women in that particular country. Um, so not only while we're here, many people such as women in Afghanistan are being deprived of their right to have access to higher education and to employment for that matter. But while we're here, many people have absolutely no clue where are they going to sleep this evening, how are they going to eat tomorrow, how are they going to address their various health issues, which water they're going to drink tomorrow or the day after, because in many places around the world, they have to walk kilometers and kilometers in very dangerous conditions just to get some water of dubious quality. Many people around the world have absolutely no access to electricity of any kind. Many young graduates around the world are experiencing very high rates of unemployment, which is actually addressed in the many people, which is addressed, of course, in Sustainable Development Goal number 10 on reduce inequality, many people, and particularly minorities, linguistic minorities, ethnic minorities, are suffering discrimination just because, well, because of who they are, and not by any, and by all means, they're being discriminated from a legal standpoint, but also even contravening existing legal standards in many countries. Um, and while we are here, many people are just fleeing their countries because they either their countries are just disappearing or are suffering the consequences of natural disasters that are provoked by and generated by the direct effects of climate change. But also, while we are here, many people also flee their countries for a different reason because of violence and persecution and the plain violation of the human rights. So I say, while we are here discussing about these things, many people do not have the privilege of waiting. Many people around the world, as we speak, are dying, are suffering, are being hurt because of the inactions of some. So it is the responsibility of us, those who somehow are involved in jobs that allow us to do something about it and to connect with these realities. And I encourage you, students and future graduates and professionals, to do your part. And you probably are not going to solve world hunger um, yourself, but anything that you can do about it, any contribution that you can make, first as a student, then as a professional, anything you can do makes an impactful and significant contribution to address the problems that we have. We have global problems that require global solutions, and this is why we're here at the United Nations to make this a reality. Um, the United Nations does not impose solutions to absolutely any single country, but we are here as the United Nations Charter states in this article number 1, that we're here to harmonize the actions of the international community to come together to solve these issues, to address these issues. And although you might think that the United Nations is an intergovernmental organization, which actually it is, but we understand the critical value of having a number of stakeholders coming together to make this a better world for all of us, but particularly to those who have been left behind. And this is why the UN engages with civil society organizations, with churches and religious groups and foundations in the private sector, but also engages with academia. And this is done primarily, in the case of the Secretariat at least, through the initiative that I lead, the United Nations Academic Impact program. Now, when you're a student, you might have a number of ideas of what to do, but when it comes to the time that you already have your degree in your hands, now what you can do about it, what you can do to be a better professional. And I believe that, well, first and foremost, if you're going to look for a job, you have to really be mindful of the corporate social responsibility that the potential employer um, handles and manages. I believe one has to be mindful of these issues, but also because of the fact that many companies in the private sector are trying to be more sustainable and greener. Um, um, it's very difficult to assess from afar why they're doing so. They might either believe that's a good thing to do, that they might actually believe that this is something that they should do. In other cases, we have seen what we call greenwashing. Some private sector entities that just say, well, we are green just because we say so. But in reality, if you see their different practices and the things that they do are quite far away from anything you can consider sustainable, including, for example, and actually, if you see the principles of the United Nations Global Compact, which is the initiative that primarily deals with the private sector. Actually, one of the key principles is protection and promotion of human rights, even in the private sector. So when we see this, when we have to really see and be careful with the policies that we can see, but also even if a company is not so much gained to the idea of being more sustainable, you can make a difference. You as part of the company, you as part of this enterprise, you can actually advocate from within, from the inside, that their practices, their standards, their internal legislation, their operations are actually indeed more sustainable, and they can be more sustainable. That's the first step. The second step is that whatever policy they have in place to be more sustainable, you can make a significant contribution from your own end because you have your own views, you have your own perspective because you have your own family, you live in a certain community, you know what the situation in the ground. Now, if you come from a different country or your family comes from a different country, you have an even broader perspective, um, taking into consideration different variables and factors. Thirdly, it is a certain fact, and there are many studies that have shown this, that consumers of the goods and services that are offered by companies in the private sector, consumers are also more responsible than before. If consumers are paying close attention to what companies do, how they do it, where do they operate, how they treat the employees, how they treat women, how they advocate for gender equality, how they protect or not protect the environment, and so on. So they do care about all these things. Um, so consumers ultimately provoke the first part of a chain in reaction or reaction chain. Consumer demand something from the companies need the professionals that can help them to offer consumers what consumers want. So this chain is very simple, and this is why business schools and universities training professionals in that specific fields to deal with management, organizations, companies in general. They need to be mindful that the more consumers demand, the more demand will be from the company sector, from the private sector view, and hence universities need to be ready to offer professionals that are more mindful in terms of sustainability, the professionals that know what's going on in the world, professionals that are considered global citizens, professionals that know much more and beyond the specific area of expertise, the specific field in the academic realm, but they know much more about the world and how to engage with our world because the theory about the global challenges that we have, that theory is uh, in the past. Not by coincidence, the Secretary General of the United Nations proclaimed this decade that started right before the pandemic hit, um, he said that we are in the decade of action for the Sustainable Development Goals. The time to debate about how feasible these goals were or not, that time has passed. And actually, many countries that achieve certain degree of, sorry by the redundant, achievement concerning the SDGs prior to the pandemic, when we're talking about 2018, 2019, many of those countries are back to square one or even square zero as a direct result of the pandemic. So now the involvement of academia, but also the private sector, is even more vital than ever before. We are already in the year 2023. 2030 is just around the corner, and many countries again are back to square one or zero. So we really need to advocate specifically for that last sustainable development goal that you see on the screen, partnerships for the goals. And actually, this coincides this speaking engagement of mine with you today coincides with the partnership forum that is happening today here at headquarters at the United Nations as part of the Economic and Social Council of this year, and precisely the whole idea that governments cannot do that on their own. They cannot do that, you know, in an isolated way. And this is particularly true when it comes to governments in developing countries that already are in need of receiving international assistance and cooperation. But this is not only from a financial point of view, it's not only from other governments, multilateral agencies, and the United Nations itself, but also they need the involvement of as many stakeholders as possible, and that includes the private sector and also includes academia. We need all of us because these problems ultimately affect and impact all of us. These problems cannot be problems forever because again, while we are here talking about this, people are suffering, people are waiting. Let's make a world in which they do not have to wait much longer. Thank you very much indeed.
Thank you so much, Mr. Hernandez. We're going to go ahead and move on to the Q&A session. So we have a few in our Q&A box right now. I guess we'll just go from time order. So our first question is, how can we prepare for a career in sustainability, and what are some of the valuable skills in this space?
That's a very pertinent question indeed. So I would say there are three different answers to that. The first one is that many universities are already embarked in this sustainable journey, or sustainability journey, as I would call it. And they're already offering different extension programs, either as part of the curricula or elsewhere, precisely to train students regardless of their academic fields on sustainability issues. That's the first. The second is that because of we live in a world where ICTs are the norm, and because of the pandemic, and again, something positive that we took from that is that now there are many learning opportunities in the virtual world, many online resources. I would probably suggest to go for the authoritative ones from established institutions such as the United Nations, for example, or other universities or institutions of research and so on. And the third part of that answer would be, if you ask me what skill is the best in terms of sustainability, I would probably say empathy. And empathy may be considered a feeling rather than, or an emotion even, rather than an actual skill. But at least in the United Nations, we take pride of the fact that our staff has empathy toward others, because if you don't have empathy, it's absolutely impossible that you understand what other human being is suffering, or what he or she has been gone through or is currently experiencing, or what challenges he or she is facing as we speak. So the more empathy you have, the more real it's gonna get to you. The less real it gets, it is absolutely very challenging, not to say impossible, for you to really do something about it.
Thank you so much. That was really insightful. For our next question, we do have a question on the best strategy for a small business that wants to apply sustainability in its operation and practice, and where do they start?
You know, there are many guidelines that have been produced. Particularly, I will refer in the particular case of small businesses to those that have been developed by the United Nations Development Program, but also the United Nations Global Compact, which you just already referred to. But I believe the first step will be to be pragmatical and also to be practical and realistic. So the extent of a small business, of course, is the scope is much more limited, and the operations it carries out are also limited in nature. But I would say that every single part of the operation, including the advertisement of the goods and services, the actual production of or deliverance of such goods and service, and how we do the procurement, for example. This might be just a very simple fact, but every single company, regardless of size, has to do some procurement to buy the very basic elements that they need to produce the goods and services that they offer. So are you really just going because of who offers the best price? And that's the only measure that you're going to use in procurement? Actually, I remember when I worked with the United Nations Climate Change Secretariat, which of course these things have into consideration. I was in charge of a program that was training volunteers for the climate change conference that happened in Bonn, in Germany, in 2017. And I remember I wasn't directly in charge of it, but I had to oversee some things related to logistics, including we had to equip the volunteers with t-shirts and jackets, and because of the winter, and tents and so on. And one of the key factors in consideration was not only the size, of course, but also we had to really go deep into the companies that were offering that. Are there any red lines regarding what they do in terms of sustainability, human rights, treatment of women, of migrant workers, and all that? So that's the very first step you can do. Include sustainability issues in the little procurement that you do. That's the first. The second is that you really have to think through the whole operation that the company undertakes, and really see where do you have any, if at all, impact on the environment. And if you do have some, it's completely unavoidable because of the feature that it's part of the actual operation. Then you need to compensate that in any form or shape. That's the second idea. The third idea, and I will conclude the answer with this, will be to connect to the communities to a certain level. If you're going to hire somebody, uh, make into consideration that you need to have an inclusive and diverse, to the extent possible, workforce. That you need to really protect and promote human rights within your small business. That you really need to use the resources that you have and the human resources that you have to actually promote and protect the rights of those in the community that you serve. So these are very simple ideas that any small business can do.
Thank you so much. So the next question is asking how to balance the sustainability strategy, since more efforts right now are focused on the climate change aspect of it. So what other sustainability issues, such as poverty and women's empowerment, can be incorporated into the sustainability strategies?
So this is an excellent question because, as I said at the very beginning, sustainability is not just about the protection of the environment. Of course, there's a very strong component that is related to it. But sustainability encompasses a very wide range of issues, as you saw in the Sustainable Development Goals, the icons that were shown on the screen. There's gender equality, there's human rights, there's protection of minorities, and so on. So the sustainability strategy has to be, first and foremost, a key element of that. So the key word here is strategy. So you cannot have, I'm sorry to use this term, random measures that are, randomly applied here and there, now and then. There needs to be some guideline coming from the top, some strategy that the business implements, and so before implemented, that you design that and you probably consult with some experts on that front, including from academia, and you come up with a strategy that will cover all aspects of the business. And they will also cover all the different aspects of sustainability itself. If you don't have that strategy, it will be very difficult to implement the right measures to do the more insightful and informed decision making. It will be even more difficult to make an appropriate review and assessment of whatever thing we're doing and whatever measures you implement. So it is very important that you take into consideration the need for a strategy that covers all aspects of the business, but also covers all aspects of what we understand as sustainable development. Of course, you might want to take step by step, especially if you're a small business, if you don't have too much idea or too much knowledge about it, but you can do little things with these little steps covering a wide range of issues. So you can definitely protect the environment while you're also empowering women. So these are not concepts that are divorced from each other. The Sustainable Development Goals are interrelated, are interconnected. And actually, if you see a map of the world, for example, it's very easy to see that countries where you have a larger proportion of extreme poverty are usually the countries in which you have more issues of gender inequality, and it's usually those places where you have more unemployment, and it's usually the places where you have more environmental degradation, and this is not a coincidence.
I see, thank you. For the next one, they're asking if you face any difficulty changing the non-sustainable habits of big companies, and how do you navigate a company that might be resistant to sustainable change?
Well, this is a little bit hard to me to answer because I come from academia, and then I transitioned to a newspaper, which might be considered a company in the street sense of the term. And I must say that the newspaper where I work was not precisely the most sustainable place I have ever been. But certainly in the United Nations, which is my place of work since many years now, in Vienna and in Bonn and here in New York, I would say confidently that there hasn't been any resistance, but also this happens to be a place in which I would like to say most of the staff are very mindful, they are connected with the values and principles of the United Nations as an organization. In the case of a private sector company, that might not necessarily be the case, but let me tell you some examples of what we have done, not we, UNAI, but what the UN has done internally. For example, they change the whole building, the how can I call it, the windows to increase energy efficiency, for example. Um, in other cases, the Secretary General ensured that all the top leadership across the Secretariat is women. Um, and there's a very strong case to hire more women staff and more female staff, and to be mindful of these gender issues. And there's a focal point on gender in each one of the divisions, each one of the departments of the UN to address these issues. Um, Plastics are forbidden inside of the United Nations. So if you want water or soda or juice or any kind of drink, these are either aluminum cans or glass bottles, which have to be recycled. So this separation of this across the entire building. Um, the lights turn on and off depending if people are there or not. So there are many measures that have been, applied to. If you go to the cafeteria, all the forks and knives are made of wood or bamboo, I believe, but they're not made of plastics, or you have metal ones which you can reuse. So and if you go to the souvenir shop downstairs, or the bookshop, all the bags that they give are paper bags. So these are very little steps. Let me go, for example, with just the paper bags example. The United Nations, in addition to receiving thousands of delegates and participants in intergovernmental meetings per month, it's also, for those of you who have not come ever to New York or to this building, it's also a touristic place. So we receive dozens, if not hundreds, of tourists per day, which buy stuff from the bookshop. And so we're talking about a massive amount of people every day. And the fact that you are just out of plastic bag, but you're giving paper ones instead, is just a step into the right direction. And just the cafeteria I just mentioned in this building, probably on a daily basis, are more than 2,500 people per day. Let's assume at least 500, which I believe is a very small number, but let's say for the sake of the argument, 500 people eat per day in that specific cafeteria. So if you definitely get rid of all the plastics, that's a good step. So, but again, in the case of the UN, there's not that much of a resistance to that. But in the private sector, I believe it's not so much about how you make the transition and how you convince people about it. I think it's about creating awareness, and the leadership of the company have all the responsibility on that. And the same applies to universities. Whenever I speak with a university, and I do so many times per week, you have to really go to the leadership of the said institution of higher education, because you create a cascade effect that is going to affect, it's going to create a ripple effect across the entire university.
Thank you. For the next one, they're asking if there was any attempt to construct a model which measures the progress made in each of the 17 SDGs.
Well, yes and no. The short answer to that is that. The long answer is each goal has a different set of targets, and each target has a different set of measurable indicators. Most of them. Most of the indicators are numerical indicators, which are quantitative in nature, of course, and which usually refers to proportion of. Proportion of, proportion of, proportion of, proportion of. In other cases, the answer is yes or no. Having said that, because again, these are minimum standards, this is Omar Hernandez speaking, this is not the UN speaking, but some of the indicators I will diplomatically disagree with their effectiveness. Gender equality is just one example. The first target of the goal related to gender equality, which is the fifth one, is about the existence of legal standards regarding discrimination against women and girls. The existence of. So the answer is yes or no. That's it. Now, I'm not by any means an expert on women's studies or gender studies, nor am a woman myself, but I would probably be inclined to think that the sole existence of legal standards to avoid or fight against discrimination against women in itself is really not enough. to eliminate discrimination against women and girls. I mean, don't get me wrong on this. It is a very important step to have those legal standards in place, but their sole existence is definitely not. You need public policies. You need to create awareness in the population, particularly the male population. You need to probably change some cultural patterns there. So you need to have a lot of different things. But the drafters of the 2030 agenda and the experts on statistics, I am not by any means, again, an expert in statistics either. They thought that the only real thing you can measure regarding this specific target is the existence of not of a legal standard. That's about it. But most of the indicators within the 2030 agenda are not, I'm sorry, related to the 2030 agenda, because the indicators do not appear themselves there. They appear in somewhere else in something that we call the global framework of indicators. Most of them are numerical. But even in that case, some of the numbers might not be the full answer to say, yes, I am country A and I am achieving or not achieving this target related to the particular goal. That might be subject to debate, which is, I always say, the UN does not have, which is that's why I said it's a long answer. The UN does not have a model. It has a set of targets and indicators to measure to a certain degree the achievement or not of these targets. And these are statistical indicators. But if a university or a private sector company, a small business, wants to create its own indicators, you are more than welcome, entitled to do that. Because again, the SDGs are meant to be fulfilled in principle by member states of the UN, but of course, in the implementation, in practice, many people are in this sustainability journey, and they are creating for that purpose their own indicators that might not be the same that we use here at the UN.
Thank you. The next attendee is asking, is B Corp certification meaningful in the US and the international sustainability goals?
I'm sorry, I just heard the word certification, but I mean, and the rest, but not the first word.
The B Corp certification.
I'm afraid I'm not familiar with that. I'm sorry, I'm not an expert in business, but nor I have worked in that, but terribly sorry. If you send me the question in written, I'm more than happy to liaise with colleagues who might know the answer indeed to this.
Sure thing, thank you.
But if I believe it is what I believe it is, certificates or certifications, same with rankings, in the case of universities, which some universities, many are actually use and pursue. Having a certificate or certification or being in a rank, I mean, this is why we don't use that at the United Nations, actually. So this is something that other organizations do use. And in the case of universities, many are inscribed in at least two, to the best of my knowledge, international rankings, which include many issues related to sustainability. And the private sector, of course, you see these many different labels or certificates that are attached to many of the things that we buy. Now, is that really an indication of, yes, that organization or company or business is sustainable? I mean, in my humble opinion, you would need to have many other variables to actually make such an assessment. That's my humble opinion, though.
Thank you. The next person is asking some sustainable proposals that a person can initiate within the company if they're not a very big, powerful person within that company. So they're kind of like entry level or something like that.
I mean, usually, if you're gonna wait to be the CEO of said company, that's gonna be an even longer journey. I'm not saying it's not gonna happen. It probably will. I wish you all the best in your future endeavor, the professional one. But I believe you can be an entry level person in a company or an organization, a business, and you have the power of your own voice. and you can lead by example, even from whatever position that you have. And of course, it's not going to be our company is not on that route. Um, but I have read stories of people that started big things and big changes from the very beginning of their careers. As long as you are motivated, as long as you are inspired, and as long this is very important, not only you have to be motivated and inspired, you have to know what you're doing and how to do it. That way, slowly but surely, you're gonna make an impact, and you will be recognized by it. And again, most of the most prominent companies in the world are actually very focused into that for whatever reason. Please don't quote me on this. Let's put, for example, vehicle companies, car companies, manufacturers of cars. I'm not sure in the US, but certainly in Europe, now there's a law that says that cars all cars have to be electric by a certain year. Um, and in the US, the production of electric cars, to the best of my knowledge, I say this because in New York, as you probably get, we don't use that much of cars. I haven't been in a car so far this year, if I'm not mistaken. From I'm sure in Texas it's a different story, but because consumers are demanding more and more of these new technologies that are cleaner, that are greener, and so on. So companies know that there's a niche of market there, so there's a business opportunity there. So they do that either because they believe on that or because they see a business opportunity there. Whatever the reason is, most companies are really going into a more sustainable way of being, of promoting themselves or of operating. So for whatever the reason, professionals need to be prepared for that.
You. The next person is stating that they believe that the SDGs are an evolved version of the Millennium Development Goals, and asking if there are any lessons we have learned from the MDGs and how have they adopted those lessons into the SDGs.
I would say first and foremost that the SDGs have a broader, wider perspective of sustainable development, and in that sense, we have more goals, more targets, more indicators, and better ways to measure the progress or lack of from member states, both in the developed and developing world. Having said that, that doesn't mean they're perfect, but they are an improved version of the Millennium Development Goals.
Thank you. And this is our last question for the Q&A session. They're asking how we can implement more sustainable practices in our university. They're speaking as a worker for the Office of Sustainability at UTD.
Well, first and foremost, you need to do an overall review of standard practices and policies within the university, because you cannot change something that you don't know. So in every single operation or area of the business within the university, there might be an opportunity to insert certain sustainable practices. That doesn't mean you're going to change the whole thing, but certainly you can make certain small improvements in a way that you make a more sustainable university, which probably is something that is being demanded by students themselves. It will help you, and you meaning the university, to not only be more sustainable, but to save money, to be more energy efficient, to recycle more, and to use more products that are the result of fair trade and fair consumer practices. And I believe in every single step of the way in the business of higher education, there is room for improvement when it comes to areas of opportunity to be more sustainable. Saving water, electricity, the waste management system, the way even you hire professors, the way you accept new students, international ones, people with disabilities, women, and so on, the ratio, how you mainstream SDGs on campus, how you embed SDGs in the curricula of whatever the field you are teaching. Now, all these things are important, and all these things are steps that the university can do. And actually, from the UN Academic Impact side, we are just developing an SDGs toolkit to precisely offer the best ideas and practices that universities around the world are undertaking, but also We are developing the SDGs workshops in different languages. The day after tomorrow it's going to be in French, to offer the opportunity to universities in different parts of the world to precisely have a platform to talk about these issues. And we are working also on a format, a template to produce the voluntary university reviews, which is similar to the voluntary national reviews that members of the UN are conducting to assess what they're doing in terms of the SDGs. So many universities want to do something similar, and we are currently working precisely on that. It's one of the aspirations that we have for this year. And we are more than ready to provide training on the SDGs. We are offering that for free to universities around the world, a virtual mode. And as a follow-up to that training, we can also provide specific guidance and expertise, not only ourselves, because I'm not an expert in all these issues, but we can certainly liaise with colleagues in other departments of the Secretariat and offer you concrete guidance in case that the university requests that. So if the University of Texas at Dallas is interested on that, please by all means email me, and I'm more than happy to do a follow-up. My email is very simple. It's omar.hernandez@un.org. So by all means, if you have any questions, not only this person from the Office of Sustainability, but any of the attendees and participants in this virtual event, you are more than welcome to email me.
That's wonderful. Thank you so much. I didn't know that the UN was actually rolling out that kind of resource. So that is going to close off our Q&A session. Thank you, Mr. Hernandez, for answering all those questions and also for your talk. Okay, so for the last bit of our webinar, we're just going to talk a bit more about the case competition. So I know I saw some questions in the Q&A portion. So in terms of next steps, you will find 3 to 5 students to form a team or just register as an independent. We're having our information session tomorrow at 6 p.m. at Microsoft Teams. And tomorrow, actually, the registration will open. So the form will go out and you'll be able to register as a participant. And then you'll be able to join case workshops. And we have Haley Randall, who's been really instrumental in putting together this competition. So if you have any questions, you can definitely contact her. Yeah, and here are some QR codes for the competition. The first one is to register for the information session, just so that you can receive the attendee link. And then also we have links to our Instagram and LinkedIn, where we put a lot of our updates and information regarding the competition, and then all the other activities that we do within SGBI. Yeah, so that kind of closes off our activities for this webinar. Thank you so much to everyone for attending. And yeah, I was wondering if any of my panelists had more things to say. All right, I think that'll be it. Thank you so much for joining us today, and I hope all of you